they've got a little bundle of joy that they're eagerly waiting to make her appearance in this world. So they're going to be having a baby shower May 7th at 3 o'clock in the park that's right behind the church here. That is 3 o'clock, again, May 7th. If you would like to RSVP, text Alyssa or Brandon, and we'd love to have you join us for that. They also have a baby list, so if you want to take a picture of that and save that for later so you can check out their baby shower gift requests, you can do so. One more thing. So this organization here is called the 199th. It's a charity that supports victims of sex trafficking. So it's a pretty important charity for some folks that really need some help in their lives to kind of put the pieces back together. We're doing a cornhole competition. It's $50 per team to play. So that is 2 people per team. So that's $25 per person for playing. Or if you want to play and get a meal, that's $80 a team or $40 per person. So if you'd like to sign up for that, get with Christy, not me. She's spearheading that for our group today. Yeah, there we go. There's Christy. Hint, hint. Somehow you got shorter when you stood up. But the winning team gets a set of bags each, plus some cash considerations as well. So if you're good at cornhole, if you suck at cornhole, we don't care. Come on out, have some fun, and support an awesome charity that could use it. So with that being said, what is what? No. I tricked you. No, it is my honor to now turn the microphone over to our pastor, Matt, and his lovely wife, Ashley, to bring us the message today.
He's not kidding. That's literally, that was my house this morning. Every day. So, my name is Matt. This is my wife, Ashley.
Hello.
Come on, Shrimpy. The reason we want to do this is, I'm going to pray. Actually, would you pray? That's even better. Would you pray?
Okay. Father, I just want to pray for everybody here in this church and for this day. I just want to have this conversation be very heartfelt and led by the Holy Spirit because, let's face it, it's called the real for a reason because we can't get any more real than this. So I just want to pray for our service and everyone, and everybody has a good day. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So the reason I want to talk about this, I want to do this, is guess what? Life is not fun sometimes, right? And life is a struggle when you are married to somebody who also has a struggle and who also has trauma. And I think, could you turn this down for me, Ryan, just a little bit? That's like serious echoage. Oh my gosh, give me that. So I think the problem is we come to God and we come to our spouse relationship, or even if we're looking at dating somebody, we come to them and we show up with a whole U-Haul full of luggage. All of it, every bit of it, right? And it's not just from the place that we lived prior, it's from every single place we've lived from the time that we were born till the time that we end up in a relationship together. Would you agree with that?
100%.
Okay, so basically, you know, my wife being in her late 30s, yeah.
I'm actually 40. I'm getting ready to turn 40.
I'm trying to be sweet.
Thank you.
But now, honestly, when we got together, even though we had this great relationship and we had respect for each other on a professional level,
you have to tell our story.
I'm not going to. This is not the place for that.
Okay, sorry.
No, so here's the deal. This what happened. She hit me with a late night text like, hey, what up, boo? No, I'm just kidding.
Fake news. That's not
No,
what happened.
no. Here's how this happened. So she thought I was still married to Christina because she didn't know all that happened. So she texted Christina and I at the same time. Like, hey guys, hope you're doing well. How's it going? Hey Matt, I read your book. Awesome, everything's great, right? And so Christina hit her back with, I'm not with Matt anymore, I'm with Weldon. I didn't want to be a pastor's wife, deuces, right? And so then I got the hey, what up, boo text message is what happened actually. Tell me I'm wrong. You're gonna tell me I'm wrong.
Hey, would you
I
like
know.
to-
Hey,
No,
this is what she did. She said, hey, here's the picture of me with purple hair. I hope you like it. What do you think about it? And then here's 5 other pictures of different hair colors. Hey, that's, come on. Am I wrong?
No.
Okay, you tell me what
I
happened.
said,
What happened?
hey.
What happened? Hey, what up? Hello.
I said, oh my gosh. I said, hey, would you like to grab coffee sometimes?
And what did I say?
Or sometime. And then you're like, ooh, I don't know, I'm scared of you.
100%. Hey, 100%. And I'm going to tell you why. When we hadn't talked for a year, and honestly, part of the reason we didn't talk for a year is because I believe in setting healthy boundaries for life, and so I stopped talking to her. Not that she was doing anything wrong, but I was married, and so like there's boundaries. We had a work relationship, and that's where it needed to stay. And it wasn't that anything was happening, it was just, that's how I am. So a friend of ours died. That's the whole reason that she actually reached out to us. There was a guy named Dave that was a volunteer who used to bring food to Avenue of Life and other places, and he got hit on a freeway and died. And so she said, hey, I'm wondering if you heard about Dave. And so we met for coffee, and she's like, hey, you want to go to lunch? And I said,
No, I've got this extreme workout fitness routine going on, and I have to eat chicken for lunch.
and I did at the time. Obviously, I'm not on that extreme fitness program anymore. But at the time, when I ran the half marathon, I was doing really well. Yeah, but yes. But the outcome was, regardless of how you looked at it, we started off way behind the 8 ball. And it's partly my fault, and it's partly her fault. And we could blame it on exes, we could blame it on problems, we could blame it on situations, we could blame it on this, that. The honesty is both of us stand before you broken people. Broken people. Both of us stand before you people that have been hurt and people that have hurt. Would you agree with that, or would you not agree
along
with
with 17 children, so.
that? Yeah, and we have 17 children, which is why we played this. So what we together want to talk to you about is relationships, and there's a deeper reason. I feel that the enemy, specifically with our church, uses that to hurt our church. I just do. And I look at my own situation, I look at every other situation for all our people, and it's either the relationship at home, it's trauma, it's seeking and finding relationships with other people that are a little more in their brokenness than you are, and we see people disappear. They just keep disappearing, right? And it sucks because I don't think we're honest enough with each other about this. I think that it's easy to look at Christianity and be like, hey, praise God, man, I'm saved now. God brought me. Everything's good. We're good to go. Honestly, like kid comes back from the park with no shoes on. Here's a good example of this, right? This is reality. This is real life. But the thing is, like, we are losing people because we don't talk about the real life of trauma. We don't talk about the real life of addiction. We don't talk about the real life that you get addicted to other things even though you're not actively drinking and doing drugs, right? We don't talk about the fact that nobody really tells us how to live together. They just point to a verse and say, that's what you got to do. For some of us that didn't grow up in church, we don't know how to do that. Right? You're asking us to build something when we're not an architect. You're asking us to build something when we are not a a carpenter, when we're not a framer. And so we want to help you with that. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. No, but just to add to that, I just want to add, when Matt and I had coffee at the end of June, our first date was with Brooke and Travis over here, kind of. I guess it's kind of technically a date. He asked me to come see the fireworks at Pearson Park. And so that was July 3rd, and then he proposed to me on August 14th, and then we got married on October 1st. So I always like to say that Christian eye contact, you're getting married. So just want to point that out. So that's how that happened. So, but knowing Matt in a professional relationship before, I mean, reading his book and knowing his whole life story and having my master's in counseling and stuff like that, like I already knew what kind of brokenness I was dealing with, but not,
I didn't.
but also not recognizing what kind of brokenness I was dealing with at the time. So I think when Matt knew me, he knew me post-divorce. Like I was working at a bar, I was drinking, I was sleeping with whoever, and it wasn't a good place. I had my kids every other week, so every other week I was a good mom, and then every other week I was living my best life. So it kind of, and I knew that, and Matt would always challenge me when I worked with him, so that's why I was like, oh, I don't know why I'm asking
How would
him
I challenge you?
He would be like, okay, I'm going to pray for you and stuff like that. And he's like, write down 10 things that you think's good about yourself. And I was like, I don't want to do that, you know. And so I'd always try to dodge him at work, except for when he brought me burritos and stuff like that. But so I'd always try to dodge him, and just because I didn't want to hear that. So I wasn't ready to hear that. So I knew what I was getting into when I texted him that night. So, well, maybe not at first, but after that. So
Fair enough. Does anybody know what this is?
Looks like the fire triangle.
Thank you for reading the screen. I'm glad nobody else read the screen. You guys are horrible. So this is the fire triangle. Okay, when I was in prison, I did wildland firefighting in Arizona, and it was one of the greatest things I ever got to do. Now, here's the thing. In order for fire to happen, you have to have all three of these. You can't have two and fire happen. You can't have one and fire happen. You literally have to have three. You have to have oxygen, you have to have heat, and you have to have a fuel source. You can have oxygen and heat and no fuel source, and really it's just like summertime, and it's warm and it's nasty, right? You can have fuel and heat, but without oxygen, the fire doesn't, so it doesn't start. In the same way is the Cartman drama triangle, right? You literally have to have all three of these. But here's what happens. I want you to think about your relationship. In the relationship, even though there's two of you, guess what? You guys will play all three of these, right? So one of them's the victim. One of them says, I can't believe that you did this to me. And the persecutor, right, is angry. I didn't do anything to you. I don't know what you're talking about, right? And so then the persecutor will jump from the persecutor to the rescuer because the victim needs that. Or the victim will jump back and forth between the rescuer and the victim because the persecutor puts them in that position whichever way they go. And I want you to think about this. Think about arguments that you have with your significant other, or even if you are not in an active relationship, look at how you talk to your friends. Look at how you build conversation with your friends. When you start, is it a normal conversation? And then when you get your feelings hurt, or you get upset, or you feel offended, what do? We become the victim. And that person automatically becomes the persecutor. And then what usually happens, which is not healthy, is a third person sometimes gets drawn into this triangle because the person that the victim needs somebody to co-sign with them about the pain that they're going through. And before you know it, what happens is this triangle gets out of control, and the two people that need to reconcile don't. And just like the fuel triangle, if you don't have all three of those, you don't have the drama triangle. But how do we do that? How do we make it through in life without sitting and continually bouncing back and forth between that triangle, because I'm going to tell you, it's horrible. It's horrible. And if you've ever been in a relationship with somebody that jumps from victim to persecutor, it is absolutely horrible. Or if we are the ones that jump from victim to persecutor, if it's poor me, I can't believe you did this to me, to how dare you and you're a piece of garbage and I can't, like that is unhealthy. This is trauma. This is trauma. And the problem is I would venture to say, if you guys aren't too good to admit it, I would say almost everybody in here can think of one scenario where they have played all three of these in one conversation, right? One fight with your significant other, in 45 minutes, you have literally covered every part of this triangle. That is not healthy. Just because we're talking about this doesn't mean that this is a healthy lifestyle to live. It is miserable, it's horrible, and you are destroying not only yourself, but you're destroying the person that you're with.
No, I was just going to add to, we had to do this triangle, and it was funny because he met with Pastor Brian Wright over here at Foundry.
Shout out to Brian.
And I didn't know what this triangle was called, but we actually used this triangle in my previous employment, which was with child welfare. So a lot of caseworkers find themselves in a rescuer type setting because we are busy rescuing people. However, we are actually dealing with burnout and stuff like that, and other people's, like, empaths are, interceding other people's trauma and stuff like that. So it was more focused on self-care at that point. But we would often find ourselves in the victim category. I would say in my past relationships, I have been in the victim category, but it's because I have been gaslighted and manipulated because I was with a narcissistic person. And you guys know, if you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissistic person, it's super hard to get out of. So, but yeah, so we can all find ourselves at different, it doesn't have to be in relationships, it can be at work, it can be basically anywhere, any type of setting in your daily life. So,
and so here's the other thing about the rescuer. Like, when we hear rescuer, we think good things, but unfortunately, 9 out of 10 times, this is a bad place. And I'm going to explain why. I got a buddy, Daniel, who's in prison right now, and he had a friend that was strung out on heroin, and his mom used to go pick up drugs for him so he wouldn't hurt. And that sounds crazy, but that's real, and that happens a lot. And parents will enable, and we call that loving people to death, right? Like, you are literally loving them to death. And guess what? That's an extreme example, but let me give you a smaller example. I'm going to continue to let you, not that you're doing this, but I'm going to let you spiral out of control, cause a bunch of problems, hurt yourself, and then be right there to grab you and to pull you back and to fix all your problems for you, or vice versa, right? What ends up happening? Is that really helpful? Yeah, you enable. And so instead of actually rescuing from a situation, I'm just letting her know that it's okay for her to continue that behavior and to keep hurting herself and the people around her. Do you have another example?
As all my kids start walking in here, I'm trying to think of a good parenting one, because I think we all fall into enabling our babies at some point in time, and when they come up to, like, hard life lessons, like, I have an 18-year-old, she's had to learn a lot of hard life lessons here within the last week, and I keep on saying, like, hey, I've been trying to prepare you for this, and she's like, I know, but she don't want to hear that because she's 18. They know everything, right? So in comparison to my 7-year-old right here, I get after them about, like, I lit up all the kids last night because our dryer has been broken for the last couple of weeks, and we have 9 people that live in our household. So I have been doing laundry, I don't know, every waking minute that I have to catch up on it, and I still forgot about the upstairs. Like, my 13-year-old back here is smiling because she knows. So I'm like, I'm going to throw all these clothes away, and I'm going to burn them or donate them or whatever, and so it's like, I don't want to do that. And then my little guy over here dumps all of his clean clothes back into the dirty clothes because he thought that they were dirty. But they were folded and they were nicely, organized. So we had to just, he heard me yelling through the wall last night. So they're all grounded and everything. It was crazy.
I was laughing.
Yes. So at that point, I'm tired of looking at clothing. So, but yeah, I don't know if that was a good example. But if I don't get after them, I enable them to do things.
Yep.
And then it actually ends up hurting them to when they become adults. I've enabled them so much that they cannot figure out life situations. And it's all, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Ray, about Ray Charles, but his mom is watching him. He's starting to become more blind than he was. And she's watching him from afar, and he's kind of looking around trying to get, a sensory type deal with solving problems, and she just kind of stands there and watches him. And I feel like that's sometimes like what we do with our kids. Like, we want to help them and we want to jump back in, but we have to stand back and let them figure it out themselves, because if they don't, we're setting them up for failure when they become adults. And it's not a bad thing to rely on your parents. It's not. That's what we're here for. But I'm all about letting my kids make mistakes and learning from them, because if I don't, I don't want my kids living with me till they're 45. You know what I mean? We can't be doing that, because they're going to be doing their own laundry by then, but still,
So if we look, we can change the drama triangle into a healthy, balanced triangle, right? So the persecutor moves out of the persecutor oppressive position and goes to the assertive, setting good boundaries position. These are the boundaries that I need to set. This is where I stand. This is what we're doing. This is how I want to see it. Now, here's the thing. There's two people setting boundaries in this relationship, right? Like, when we are together as a couple in a relationship, we each have specific boundaries that we set. And we have to be able to say, hey, these are my boundaries. But at the same time, if it's if it's a boundary that's just built on trauma, be gentle and loving enough to say, hey, this is why I've had to set this boundary. I don't think you'll do it. Can you help me heal through this?
Well, and I think sometimes we don't even know our boundaries until they trigger us somehow. And when they're triggered, it becomes like, okay, I'm learning this about your trauma. You're learning this about mine. And that's as like we go in a relationship. We've all had different things that have happened to us over time. And so I think it's important, and we'll get to this later. Like, I always use the example about having a PhD in your significant other's trauma.
You can't jump ahead.
I am
Look at
jumping ahead.
that's end game stuff.
But I am.
No, you need to stop. See?
So that's what, so we
Shouldn't
have
care about my boundaries.
So, listen, so, but.
That's an example.
Yeah. So I always would like to say, like, I know what triggers my husband, just like I know what triggers my kids. I know what triggers my family. So I am very delicate with how I handle situations with him about certain things, because I know what that spiral looks like, and I know what that PTSD, everything looks like. And so to be gentle with that, I mean, relationships are hard. What might set him back in his trauma might trigger my trauma, and next thing you know, we're battling each other for no reason. I mean, we
except past trauma.
Past trauma, yes, and we fight about the silliest things. But I can't think of a good example. We didn't fight this morning. Usually we fight before we come to church about something.
I know a good example. Last night driving in the truck, and we didn't end up fighting. But here's what happens, right? Like she likes to tell me when I'm supposed to turn next, even though I know where I'm going, even though I've lived in the same house for 4 years. You know what I'm saying? And she's like, hey, you need to turn up here. Hey, you need to go here. What it is that's her anxiety, worried about something else, which we figured out was work and some other things, but that's how it comes out for her, right? She gets very regimented and controlling, not overarchingly, just in little stuff. And sometimes she doesn't even know she's doing it. And really, it was kind of neat, because last night was the first night. I mean, I still got frustrated, but I didn't let it accelerate past that. And I stopped and I prayed for her. I said, God, just let your peace dwell over her. And we were able to go enjoy a nice meal together. You know what I'm saying? And but that's the reality of how little things happen. Because here's what usually happens is it starts with that's something tiny and small, and then we fighting all night. And then we just add stuff. We're like, you know what? Let me file through this Rolodex of stuff. We're just going to fight about this. Amen. And then we're going to add these other two things on it. Am I wrong? Am I right?
Oh, yeah, and this is getting brought up tomorrow.
Yeah, hey, 100%. Yeah, sermon notes. And so instead of being rescuer and self-sacrificing, we stay attuned and compassionate to the situation that's happening. We pay attention. We say, okay, I see this person's hurting, but what is my part in this person's hurting? Is my job to save, or is my job to stand by and be a support system? Am I supposed to love and involve myself, or am I supposed to stand back and let this happen? And then the victim becomes somebody who's self-aware. 8 out of 10 times, victims really aren't victims. Victims are people that have been hurt, and they say they're a victim because that's what they've learned to do. And this plays out over and over in relationships, and it doesn't always look like poor me. What it looks like is, I knew that you were no different than everybody else I dated. I knew that you were a narcissist. I knew that, and I think in our example, she'll balance some stuff off of a past, which I've done too, but off of a past relationship to where you felt that you couldn't depend on anybody. And for us, I'd get it done, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, like thank you. And then on the flip side, though, still try to schedule it and make sure I'm there. And you see what I'm saying? Like there's this give and take because she's used to that.
Well, I would say when I suffer from anxiety and I am not treated for it or anything like that. Sometimes I like to play it off as it's a situational anxiety. Like I'll be fine. And then a lot of the times I have to be like, okay, what am I anxious about? And I could feel myself doing that with him yesterday to the point where I was getting mad at him driving. And I knew that I kept doing it, like all the way. I'm like, oh, you got to turn here. Oh, by the way, Monday we have to do this. And then it's like I have to text him about like little reminders about what's coming out of the checking account, and just different things like that. But that's my piece of control that I feel like I have, because if I don't feel like I have it, then I do spiral into becoming more anxious. I'm a little OCD. It has gotten a little bit better since I've had children. I won't say it's perfect, but 20,000 loads of laundry will do that to you and help you break through that. So, and just having little monsters live with you and just destroying all of your stuff anyway, kind of helps with that. But, so, yeah.
Yeah, so the outcome ends up, we find ourselves broken, addicted, whether to attention, to drugs, to pornography, to whatever that is, whatever the thing is, work, lying. We are trauma-filled and trauma-responsive. You guys know what that means? That means I'm offended, and so now I've said why I'm offended, but now she's offended that I'm offended, and then she's going to respond in kind to my already elevated spot, and then we're fighting, right? And then it's an argument, and then it's pain. Selfish. Guess what? We're all selfish. Amen. I'm just going to tell you guys, we're all selfish. Okay, you can say you're not selfish. That means you're even more selfish than usual. But not for real, maybe. But I'm selfish. You're selfish.
We're human. We're human.
Yeah. Distracted, stressed, hurting people. We become, after all of this, we become hurting people that hurt people, right? And we don't even realize we're doing it till it's been a day and we can't look at each other in the face because we have hurt each other. And even though we've said sorry, that doesn't change the fact that there is a wound.
And when we were talking about this last night, so I wanted to put distracted up here, but mostly for all my ADHD people out there.
See, she's targeting me.
So, no. And I know that, 20 years ago we didn't have this problem, but now it's social media, it's Facebook, Snapchat, whatever that distracts us and takes away our time from, our family and stuff like that. Because, we have a rule most of the time. The kids have to follow it. I have to get on this one all the time. But he's got to put his phone down at the dinner table. And sometimes he answers, oh, it's this person. I have to answer this. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So he pays for it later. No, I'm kidding.
She's not kidding.
So, but I try really hard to set an example because the first thing that my kids do when they wake up is like, hey, can I have your phone? And I'm like, absolutely not. Because we are trying to make it a point. I know this little guy's looking at me because he's guilty of it. But I try to make it a point where they actually can wake up and like not be so addicted to screen time, because we didn't deal with that when we were, I don't know, 80s babies in here. We didn't deal with that. We came home, when the street lights went on. So a lot of our kids don't have that opportunity anymore. So yesterday, our kids wanted to dig a hole to China in our yard. So I let them. You know why? Because they didn't have any phones. And it was greet.
And then we had to fill it in today.
And they all had to go back out there and fill it in today. But you know what? It kept them.
Yes,
what?
they played
Yeah.
with the worms, 100%.
Yes. Yes, they named all the
Hey,
worms
that's true.
too.
That's true. Man, we could have done better.
Well, yes. But
So, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. So the thing that we want to talk about is, now that we find ourselves here, what do we do? What do we do? Right? Like here's the truth. And this is where probably a lot of churches are not going to tell you the truth. Every church leadership body is filled with every bit of this. And I'll explain what I mean. Pastors, for the most part, are selfish because we hear from God, quote unquote, right? And we have a vision and we fill that vision. And the problem is that we hurt our family in the process of fulfilling that vision, because we think that God said to do it. And so that means that we don't have to listen or stop or have any checks in our life. So we just want to complete what we need to complete. And the honesty is that is not biblical. That's not what God ordained. That's not what God said. We are to love our wife. Well, we're going to get to that, Ephesians 5. But if a man doesn't take care of his family, he's worse than an infidel. It's just not finances, it's emotions, it's heart, it's love, it's relationships, it's all these things, right? It's all these things. And I was guilty of that most of my life. Like, I am the guy with ADD that is driven, that is a builder, that is all that. So I worked full-time, worked overtime, started Firm Foundations from the ground up, was preaching in the prison, was doing all of that. And you know what suffered? My kids, my wife at the time, my oldest daughters. And they all got put to the side because, if I'm honest, they were not near as important as the mission that I was on. And I destroyed lives. I showed my kids that there were other things more important than them. And it was wrong. It was wrong.
Oh, I would just add to that. Now, there is a point in time where I can recognize when that is happening. And so I have to either take his phone and hide it from him. No, I'm kidding. But just like recognize that and have him do self-care, because if he doesn't, he's going to burn out. And I always like to use like the oxygen falling in the airplane. Like, you have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of other people. Because if you don't, you suffer and you get ill, or for whatever, you get stressed and you deal with all of that stuff. Now, saying that is hard to do for myself as well. But yes, I think if we can all recognize what gets us to that point, or at least schedule it or something, even if it's just listening to music, going on a walk, doing something, talking to a friend, anything to help you with self-care is super important.
I play Fortnite. I know it sounds silly.
Matt plays
I
Fortnite.
play Tony Hawk and Fortnite. Those are the only two games I really ever play. And because I'm old, right? for real. But I sit and so for my attention deficit disorder, I can fuzz out for 20 minutes, click right back in and go back and do what I need to do. I've been fixing my house for like 2 months now, right? Because I have ADD, so that's part of it. But I've really enjoyed that time when I'm not working, because I can zone out, and so it's good for me. And so we want to talk about Ephesians 5. You want to read first, or do you want?
Sure.
Okay. How about you read 1 through?
If I can see without my glasses.
maybe
Okay.
1 through 5.
So therefore be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. But sexual immortality and all impurity of covetousness must not even be named among you as if proper among saints. Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving. For you may be sure of this, that everyone who is sexually immoral or impure, or who is covetous, that is, an idolater, has no inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God.
So I wanted to read that because really we're going to really be hitting 22 through 33. But I want you to understand the groundwork and the context that Paul has laid in this chapter. Like when we look at the groundwork, yes, is about couples, but it's more so about our individual walk with God and where we find ourselves and how we respond, right? Because if we're going to be imitators of Christ, was Christ any of these things? Anybody answer for me? No, he wasn't. So in verse 22, it says, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. That's all I'm preaching on. In the name of, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm dead tomorrow, COVID. It says, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body. And he himself, its Savior, now. And this is what I love, right? I love smashing dudes with this one. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so wives should submit to everything to their husbands. Oh, but by the way, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Now, newsflash, we as Christians have trashed women for years in the church. We have stepped on them. We have made them servants and slaves of our vision and our desires as men. That's the reality. That's the truth. And that's why most people get excited when we say, wives, submit to your husbands. And that's why most women look at that and be like, because we don't understand how it really works, right? So, yes, she is to submit to me. I'm the head of the household. I protect the household. I guide, I love. But on the same token, I love my wife and I listen to her. And I don't make decisions that affect anything without her. I don't do that, because she holds a place in my wife. If I'm to love her like Christ loved the church, then that means everything that I have, every desire I have, every opportunity needs to be balanced with how does this affect my wife? Are you guys like that? Are you guys living that? Or do you guys, when you look for getting into a relationship, are you looking at how can I love this person like Christ loved the church? Because that's hard. It's hard. Oh, because guess what? Because if we go back to the list, I'm broken. I'm addicted, right? I lie. I lie to myself. I lie to her about like we do this. We don't even realize that we're lying sometimes. You have to look back and be like, oh, dang, I said that, right? Oh, yeah, babe, I got you. I'll be there. Hey, I'm going to be there to pick up the kids. I'll be fine. What if I don't show up?
So I was just thinking of that. I think one that we kind of left off here is insecurity. Just because I know that I am insecure.
Me too.
And so every once in a while, I get a little trippy, and so does Matt. And then, so we have to check ourselves a lot with different things. But I think that's just normal. That's obviously from past hurt and different things like that. Obviously, I love him. I can tell him all day long that I'm not going to hurt him. And I'm sure that he has heard those words before from several people. But I think the full-on dealing with trauma and acting, like I'm just being myself, and just the action with my words is always super important to people in relationships. Obviously, if you're in a relationship and you're not going to respect someone or be loyal to them and trust them and all kinds of other stuff, don't be in a relationship.
Yeah.
So I kind of just lost my train of thought, but
No, that's okay. So we have learned how to communicate with each other, because guess what? I am 100% filled with insecurity because I have started dealing with abandonment from the time I was a child. Man, honestly, I got into it with my mom this morning because she expects me to take care of her just because. And wait on her and not work and do this. And I had to have an honest conversation like, Mom, that's not my role. My role is to honor you and love you, and I'll help you however I can. But I'm not supposed to take care of you. And I said, as a matter of fact, I said, if we go back, and we ran through a whole bunch of stuff, because from the time I was a kid, I was left different places, right? And just so she could go out and be drinking with her friends. You know what that does to a kid? It destroys a kid. And so with every woman that I've come into contact with, you know what my first thought about that woman is? This can only go so far before she hurts me. And then when you, so this is where the twisty part comes in, right? Without realizing it, I'm actually attracted to women that are going to destroy my life. Why? Because that's what I know.
except for me, y'all, just saying.
Yeah, but no, for real. But like think about this. The brokenness in me makes me look at brokenness and say, that looks great. And honestly, for some of you women, it's the same way. You have become comfortable with a man that is a piece of garbage and doesn't treat you right because that's what you know. And just because something's comfortable doesn't mean that it's good. And that's a hard truth. That's a hard truth. And I'll say this. Both of us are individuals that are broken. But we communicate and we talk and we love each other, and we try our best to work through situations together rather than just being mad. Or it's never just her working on something and I'm like, yeah, that's great. You know what I mean? Let me know when you get done. And it doesn't happen the other way either. Amen? Man, it got quiet. So we're going to go through a few things. So you might have noticed a piece of paper because we expect you to take homework, right? So here's the deal. If you look under each of these things, there's a his and hers. This is where it's going to get fun. Each of you are going to write down what you get from this. Something that you are doing wrong and something that you think your partner should work on. And we're going to come together at the end and talk about this for each of these. Ain't that great? Praise the Lord. Amen.
And also, if you are not in a relationship, that is okay. Just go ahead and put stuff that you are aware that you do, or something that you would appreciate from a relationship, a future relationship.
And here's what I'm going to tell you. If you don't, you're just going to keep doing the same thing. Like, if you don't change how you feel and what you think and what guides you, you will literally just keep reciprocating over and over again all the pain. And so communication, babe, what is the number one problem in relationships? Survey says?
Communication.
Communication. Why do you think that is?
Because we suck at communicating as humans, and
Because we speak two different languages, don't we?
that's right. We all have a different love language too. So, yes.
And the thing is, right, her love language is not my love language. But I sure am good at loving her with my love language.
What is my love language?
I would say words of affirmation and time. But also gifts. But you're really weird. So this is the weird thing. She likes to shower me with gifts. And I'm like, right? Like, I love it.
You're not You're like, oh my God, I love this.
Just like that, just like that. Oh my God, I love it. But she loves me the way that she knows how to be loved, and she knows how to love. Right, but here's the deal. When she writes stuff down, this is what she doesn't know. I think she might. When she writes stuff down and she puts little notes and different things of mine, and I find them later, like in my Bible or in my Utmost for His Highest book, that changes my whole day. And so I have the same, when we got engaged, she wrote a I love you with a little A, and I've had that in my book for a year and a half. That's my bookmark in my Utmost for His Highest. And every time I look at that, I smile because I know that she loves me.
I know, super gross, you guys. I know.
But that's the reality, right? So I want you to write down these verses, guys. You can read the verses later. We're not going to go through all that because we'll be here forever. Finances. Oh, let's talk about finances. Whether you spend too much money, or you're frugal, or you spend too much how you want to spend it, or whatever. I'm going to say this, right, because this is the pastor in me. Tithe to the church. Okay, tithe to the church. And the reason I say tithe is we tithe. And when we first got together, she didn't understand at first, like 10%.
No, I understand tithing. I grew up Catholic,
Okay,
so I fully understand tithing.
Okay, she just wasn't about that life.
Yeah.
But everything I get, like, that I have income coming in, boom, 10% plus, and then I give to friends and stuff like that. That's what I do. And the reason I do that is because that's what I feel that God requires of me, right, is to not only tithe but also to give. And the crazy part is she jumped in on this, and she does that now, and we as a family tithe, and like, I don't even know why you know what I mean? We've made it a long way, and we still argue about finances because
Yeah, no, I almost feel convicted, honestly, if I don't tithe, because I paid all of our bills because they're all up front in the month, and I was like, oh, I have like $20 left, but I was like, I made sure I tithed before I went down to $20, but still, it's just one of those things that becomes a practice, just like paying your bills on time normally, it's one.
So, and she is way more regimented than I am, and I depend on that. And I think it's amazing. And I let her do that. And she'll tell me, hey, you got X amount of dollars to spend, and I'll pretend like I'm stressed out about it, like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? I'll cry a little bit, and we move on with life. And really, honestly, our biggest thing is we eat out too much. Anybody else agree with, you know what I'm saying? We eat out too much. Like, it's really easy to go. We love going out and eating. And the problem is when you do that a lot with a lot of kids, we got kids all over the place, right? So we go out, man, that's $150 a pop almost every time we go out because these kids, right? Like unless we're hitting 4 for 4s at Wendy's, it's going to cost $1 million. Hey, the fact that we both have jobs and we're both busy and doing things, that adds up, right? Because it's so much easier to pick something up on the way home than it is to have food ready.
Well, to add on to that, we also have a kid. Yes, we have a kid in football, wrestling, soccer, basketball, and theater. So we are
not all together.
Yes, all together. So we are constantly so time is preparing meals, and sometimes we ain't got time for that. So that's how we roll. Sometimes.
Yeah. So that's that.
Or they just don't eat. So.
Is there any kids in here anymore? Besides, wait, who is it?
He's not listening.
Okay,
Opie.
cool.
Opie over here.
He don't even care. Opie's intimacy. Okay, we put intimacy up because if you put up sex, anyway, it's different. Listen, if you are in a committed relationship before God in a marriage, enjoy your spouse. Just keep it real. Like 3 times a week, 4 times, like, do it. That's funny. Hey, just do it. No, hey, but for real, like I say this for a reason. Hey, because there's a lot of brokenness tied to this. This is what we don't realize is when you jump into a relationship, you bring your own nasty baggage when it comes to that. And it makes it not as good as it should be. And then you walk away feeling some sort of way. Now, here's the other part of it. If you're not in a relationship and you're not married.
Oh, bye.
Bye.
Bye, Hunter.
Love you, bro. Bye. Bye. Here, go out there. I love you. He's old enough that he knows, right? So, don't, and we made this mistake, and I can think of other couples in our leadership that made this mistake. Don't go looking to fulfill that God-sized hole with sex with somebody. And the reason is because the outcome of it is worse on you in the long run. It hurts you. And we don't even realize that it hurts us. But if we go back to the trauma, my love, this is how I knew love. Love was transactional for me, right? If you give this, I give this, boom, we love each other. If you're nice to me, if you do what I ask you to do or what I hope you do, then you love me. If you don't, that means that you're unfaithful and that you don't love me. And that is unhealthy and wrong. And that was taught to me from brokenness in home and running through the world of drugs for years.
Yeah, I would add to that. So there are healthy, like sexual intimacy, and there is also unhealthy. Without going too much into it, because I'll turn super red up here. So, yeah, that's I got nothing else to say. You guys know what's wrong and right, hopefully, in that area.
I'll say this, right? The marriage bed is undefiled. You know what I'm saying? I'll just leave it at that. The marriage bed is undefiled.
Uh-oh.
And if there was ever a reason, that's the reason right there. So,
Yeah, and
Hey.
that's why there's kids. So
but if we listen, God has given us each other in a relationship to enjoy that. And so now that we've talked about the sex, let's put that to the side and let's talk about intimacy. My conversations with you are the greatest thing in the world. When we get to talk, when we get to sit with each other, when we get to watch TV together and snuggle and just crack jokes and clown each other, when we watch TikTok videos at night, because that's what we do. That's what we do. I enjoy that time with you because it's just me and you.
okay.
Just so you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and intimacy obviously is not just sex. It is having those vulnerable conversations with your spouse or significant other that you would not normally have with your best friend or whoever, coworkers, whatnot. So there is when we did a couples retreat last summer, and the therapist there just wrecked us. We had 3 hours of therapy daily, and y'all, it was a lot to deal with. So there was things that I learned about myself where had been locked away because I just didn't want to sit in my own crap and deal with it. And so I think when that happened, I had expressed I don't like being vulnerable with people because it makes me feel weak. Now I can imagine as a woman, as a man, that is also true. You feel weak, you don't cry, you're too tough to do all that stuff, and that's no different for women. So I think as we go through life, we build up those walls that we just put up, and we don't let anybody see what's behind those because we've been hurt by people that we have been vulnerable with in the past. So that is something that I know I am trying to work with Matt on and to work through, because I know I still feel very awkward because I lost my crap on him the other night and just started 1 second away from flipping tables and stuff like that. And he starts smiling at me. And so that had triggered me because I'm like, why are you smiling? And he's like, no, this is beautiful. I love seeing you lose your crap like this because you never do like that anyway.
Because sometimes it needs to happen. Because her and I are polar opposites. She is, I live in control. I'm here. Everything's good. We're good. You know what I'm saying? Finance is good. Line items are good. Everything's good. This little box is good. I'm like, man, let's talk about this. What's the problem? Are we going to do, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Guess what? Those two are direct conflict with each other.
Yes.
So what do you mean bringing it up? Or when you talk about it, or when it's part of it? So I would say this. I would say our relationship with God has probably accelerated our intimacy with each other more than it ever could possibly be. because it's different, right? It's different. Now here, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I would say just growing up Catholic, I have a lot of church hurt with that. So I had pulled away from the church and didn't know God for a really long time. So I would say when I knew I was done with my crap, like I've never stopped believing in God. I just did not have a walk with him. I didn't understand it. In college, some of you may have heard this before, I took 2 years of theology and just was like, yeah, cool, the woman at the well, I don't know what that means, But now I teach Bible study at Lansing, and I have a whole new understanding about how I am correlating and relating stories from the Bible with the inmates there. And so it makes me feel like this certain responsibility that I have where I don't want to teach anything wrong that ever comes from the Bible. I want to make sure. But they made a good point. Like, the way that I read the Bible is different from how you read the Bible, and it's different from how everybody, because this is how God wants me to translate it. And I'm like, yeah, that is actually a really good, but I would say I'm a new little baby Christian over here compared to a lot of people in this room. But I think I have grown significantly in that area with his help, but also with a lot of hard work for myself, because it is hard sitting in there, because I think we have all felt ashamed, like we shouldn't be able to walk with Christ, and I think we go through that where we're like, we're not worthy enough, we're not good enough, and we talk to ourselves like that, when it is becoming more of that positive, like, self-talk, not just about yourself, but even about Jesus Christ and the way that you walk with, God. So he knows a lot more than I do, so I learn a lot from him, but I also have a lot of good questions, so, and we do talk about them, and sometimes I don't understand, and, coming from, I was raised Catholic my entire life, but yeah, I would say that it doesn't affect it. It's kind of, I would say, different. It's a different outlook on what I would have in a previous relationship. So.
It's hot. I'll say that. You know what I'm saying? Like, the closer she gets with God and the more she does, I'm like, bet. Anyway, that was free of charge. Parenting. Her and I are polar opposites when it comes to parenting.
On some things.
Like 85% of these things. Where would you say that we're together on, or the same?
I would say about lying, like when
Yep.
the kids lie.
Okay.
I don't know. I kind of give up sometimes because they destroy so many of our things in the house, like sometimes I just pick my battles with the kids. But I would say I am more of I'll admit it, I'm more of an enabler and let them get away with a little bit of stuff, and then I get mad about it later, so that's just my fault. And then he is more of we just talked about this last night or this morning. He is more of strict about lying and different things like that. I spank my kids. He spanks his kids. I don't know why they ever took that away. As long as it's not child abuse, that's something different, it's one of those things where, we do have 2 disciplinary techniques. But honestly, if I'm just in a bad mood, y'all, my kids are getting it, So, if I'm in a good mood, they might get away with it a little bit. But, yeah, they're still going to get it somehow.
And so the thing is we blended 2 families. And when you blend 2 families, you have 2 parent styles, 2 different sets of kids, 2 different everythings. And we fought about that. Like, yeah. I felt that she was showing favoritism, and I was guilty of that, right? And my heart hurt for my kids so bad that it wasn't even a reality. The issue is she parents differently, and so for a long time I've had to wear 2 hats. I've had to wear the comforter hat, and I've had to wear the disciplinarian hat, and I've worn that with my boys. And so I built this expectation of what she should come in and do. You know what I'm saying? Like Mary Poppins rolling in with the little umbrella, like coming in, spoonful of sugar, and we're doing all right. Like, the reality.
I am his glucose guardian, y'all. So don't get that twisted.
Last year you were, not so much this year.
I did roll in with a spoonful of sugar, but
no. So So in all honesty, like I did that, and last night she did. She lit them boys up in the other room, right? And I was standing in the bathroom, which was on the other side. I was just laughing. I was like, man, hey, because my kids needed that, and her kids, like the boys needed that collectively.
Well,
And
we have his two boys 100% of the time, and then my kids, I have 4 total. They go with their dad every other week, and so we have to do transitional meetings every other Monday. So we'll sit them all down. No fighting. Don't start fighting right off the bat. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. But when they have blended, it is actually quite beautiful. They treat each other like they're siblings.
they miss each other.
They miss each other. We have minimal fighting. We have normal sibling fighting, which we just laugh about sometimes. Like they're all fighting about who has to put dirt in the hole this morning, and so we will butt heads because I think that it does look like I'm showing favoritism sometimes because all of the kids are different, so they all have different things that they have to work on. Because I had a pet peeve meeting with them, if you will. I'm like, listen, mom doesn't like this. You guys leave the lights on. You do this, and I had them repeat all of them back to me so they could be aware. Like they leave their underwear in their pants. Okay, listen, I know that is very minimal to someone that is doing their own laundry.
Multiply
Fine.
that by 6.
Take it out yourself, but I'm not going to do it for you. So I will make them do it for me. And so they learn, like over time, like little pet peeve things of mine, I'm lighting them up, So like they have learned over time, but it is one of those things like blending a household, blending children together. It is a lot. And I think, honestly, since the beginning, we've done a really great job at trying to make sure they are all heard, they are all seen, and they get along together for the most part. So.
And for me, like I just want to put this out there. Is this helping anybody? Like, does this make any sense? I just want to make sure. I'm just trying to figure this out. I'm like standing up and talking. I'm like, man. So, like, for her kids, my heart hurts for the lack of a dad in their kids' life. Not that they don't have a dad. They have a father. My heart hurts for Addie, who is one of the most artistic people I've ever met in my life. That little girl can take anything and turn it into art. And that is not being fostered anywhere. There's not a person in her life besides like mom saying, man, and for me, it makes me want to cry because I look at that kid and I'm like, you will be stepped on your whole life. She's spunky though, but she will be stepped on, expected to fit this mold when that's not her. She's this beautiful little artist over here, right? And then you got Sawyer, who's wild, but she's really not wild. She's got a personality, and she's a take charge, and if you leave
Sawyer's the one in the dress, y'all.
Yeah, she's the one in the dress,
That kid
kind
could
of
survive in
bopping
the
around.
woods by herself for 2 weeks.
So there's these girls, and then her oldest Tay, that have dads that are only there, and like my heart breaks. And so I try to love them, even so with her oldest, we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. But I want her to know that regardless, I love you, right? I don't have to agree with what you're doing for you to know that I love you. And I'm not going to make you feel bad. I'm going to love you right there. Let's start with the baseline of I love you. And then we can build off of that. Because there's too many times I have not built off that baseline in any relationship. I built off, this is what I believe, these are my ideals. Honestly, which is the same that happens in relationships with couples, is I expect her or she expects me to do something, and if that doesn't happen, then we're fighting. Boundaries. We were trying to figure out which one to end with, and because there was a lot, right? But boundaries was a good one to end with. Why don't you go?
Okay, so there are healthy boundaries. Obviously, like I talked about earlier, there are triggers with boundaries. So you probably will not meet those triggers until they actually happen within like an argument or something might, like, I can't remember what I said to you one day. You would say something, I'm like, please don't say that term anymore because it had triggered me from a past relationship. And then
we were joking because I said something about being a baby, and it wasn't even like
or something. I don't
Derogatory,
remember,
but
but I
it
was like,
hit- it
nope,
hit-
don't say that
Yeah.
anymore. So I think it's like those, but I think that that's okay because Matt is all about like stand up for yourself, and that includes to him as well. Not saying that he's a big super jerk or anything like that, but I think when we
But I'm good with that.
yes,
like
when we
okay.
do get in those arguments, I think that's where like I feel like this because everybody's feelings are validated in this room. So when you do have arguments with your spouse, that might not be how you feel, but that might be how you feel like your spouse, but that is how like I feel. That's why those statements are so important. I
And-
feel stupid saying them, but you know what? That's how you feel. It may sound crazy when it comes out of your mouth, but it is also validated. So
And for me, I hated being made to feel like I was crazy. Like if I saw something happening and something was going on, I would be in a relationship with somebody that would tell me, oh, that's not true, you're crazy, you're insecure, you're making that up, blah, 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 that's not. And so we've had arguments where she's afraid to say what she needs to say because of past experiences. And in my head, it's not that she's afraid to say it, it's that she's lying to me. And because that's a quick trigger for me, because it's like, you're lying to me. Just tell me. And after a while, she'd be like, I didn't know how to say it. Why? Because there's going to come a time where both of our traumas come into play and we both freeze up. And it's all about the recovery after that.
I like to call it vapor lock.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of you guys experience post-traumatic stress, but when you do, you also go through a vapor lock where, you kind of just black out for a second. Sometimes you remember what you said and sometimes you don't. And I think I'm aware of that when that happens to Matt. And I kind of I have to be patient with not responding the way that I would normally have responded in a past relationship, because I know that that's just going to make it, well, from earlier, the fire triangle, that's going to just add more fuel to that fire. And I ain't trying to do that to him because I love him. So I think that's a big difference from past relationships that I have learned that I'm not going to ever do to him because it's different. Like I've grown, I'm 40. I don't need to be doing all that mess. You know what I mean? So obviously, not to be cliche, but I feel like God has had a plan for Matt and I to be together. And when people always ask me what my spiritual gifting is, it's always to be like to calm this dude down. So I'm the Matt whisperer. That's what I always say.
So I'll give some insight into this. So we are down in Arkansas, Eureka Springs, and I'm about to get this tattoo. She just got her hand tattooed. And the guy's like, oh, by the way, I only take cash. Like, could have said that in the beginning. Cool. So I go to the ATM to get cash. It's broken. And it's like, well, just go to this other ATM. And you know what that said to me? That said to me, here you are, again, trying to get money when you shouldn't be spending money on a tattoo. It's your son's birthday. It's this, it's that. Because I have this traumatic brain thing where I spent a lot of years as a drug addict and as a dope fiend, doing whatever I can to gain money, to do whatever, right? Even if it was something positive. Man, I got locked up real quick. And I was like, you know what? Forget that dude and forget this tattoo, and we're out of here. We're going to go pack our stuff. We're going to go. I went up to dude and said, hey, man, we're good. Here's the money for her tattoo. I'm out. You know what I mean? And I was mad. But really it was that insecurity of I've been here before. I have this trauma from running around doing this. And I've been clean off meth for 17, you know what I'm saying? So like all that stuff comes back out. And she didn't know what was going on because I was just mad for about 3 minutes. And then I started breathing again. And I walked up and I told the guy, and I was honest. I said, hey, I had a real bad drug problem. I spent a lot of years running around doing this. I said, I felt like a drug addict. I said, I'm sorry. If we can still do the tattoo, cool. And it was really important to her because it was like our Valentine's Day. That's our second year back at Eureka Springs. So it was something special between us. But that's a good example of how your trauma can ruin something special when you're not even meaning to. because we don't talk about it and we're honest with each other about it. So we need to set boundaries. We need to say, hey, these are my go, no-goes, and here's other things that we could work together on. So, my question for you, so now what? Right, now what? Now what? We need to be honest with God ourselves and our significant other. We need to be honest. We need to talk about what's going on. We need to tell God, man, this is where all my jacked up stuff is. I need you. And then we need to turn to our spouse and say, I love you. These are all the areas that I need help in. And I'm sorry that it hurt you.
Okay, so number 2, repent to God and to each other. That's pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, we're humans. We all sin every day. So it's one of those important.
Every day.
Every day.
That's you, babe.
Oh, yes. Study to get your PhD in each other's traumas. If you don't understand your spouse's trauma, you will always be in a cyclical, just torment area where you guys will just bicker back and forth for no reason. I'm not saying not to bicker. We'll probably fight about.
Because you'll bicker anyway.
We'll probably fight about something later today, but it's one of those things where it gets in like the knockdown, like drag out, fights that just do not have any reconciliation. I mean, I'm just saying just study each other, how people respond to certain things, what to do, what not to do. I think that just comes over time too. Obviously, you're not going to walk into a relationship knowing how to treat each other. Hopefully you have a baseline for that with like respect and everything else, but I would say to just learn how you respond to each other.
Here's the other thing. If you're about to begin a relationship or you're starting a relationship with somebody and there are 47 red flags, pay attention to those, please.
Yes, please.
Because it's not going to get better. It's just not. You know what I'm saying? Like if you don't work and deal with the stuff, it will never, ever, ever get better. Just FYI.
Bro, even if there's 2 red flags, same story.
And so seek counseling and mentorship from people that can help you. Love you, Brandon. Continue to date each other. Practice self-care. Practice self-care. Practice self-care.
And that's okay to do separately.
You
can do it together as a couple, but you can also do it separately. Nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all.
Actually, that's encouraged to do self-care separately.
Now, so here's what I want to do. Jack, would you come up here? Where's Bo? Where'd Bo run off? Oh, there you are. Get up here. Christy, would you come up here?
He's hiding.
Adriana, would you come up here? So here's what I want to do. So there's some oil over there on the table. Right over there. Oil.
Vegetable oil.
Vegetable oil. Canola. Here's what I want you to do. If you are in here and you want to see some change, would you come up and let these couples pray over you? Would you let them pray over you? Would you spend a moment with God to make a commitment to be the best that you can, not only for God, but for yourself also and for your significant other? So we're gonna take a break, and if you guys want to come up for prayer, come up for prayer. If not, you should still come up for prayer.